Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Edgerrin James with me. Edgerrin is a NFL Hall of Fame running back. On top of that, he's an author, and then he also has a business that he started called One Enterprises, which has multiple businesses underneath it. So, Edgerrin, thanks so much for being on today.
All right, thanks for having me. It's always great to get out and share your story and also help push everybody's brand or whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I think people are going to take away from our story today is how when you're authentic to yourself, that's when the best results can happen.
Automatically, because when you're authentic, you're yourself. And so there's nothing that's scripted, nothing that's premeditated. You just flow. And once you start flowing and you get in your flow, you're going to be the best at whatever you're doing. And you're going to make sure that you're giving people the real you. So anytime they come across or you encounter each other, it's going to be the same every time because you've always been yourself.
Yes, I love it. Now, to start off your story, growing up, your grandfather was a general contractor. So talk a little bit about seeing that and just having that experience as a youngster, seeing your grandpa working hard.
Well, the thing that my grandfather provided or that he showed me was how to lead.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with different personalities, different people, and different situations, the leader has to be quick on his feet. He has to be always have an answer. He has to guide people. People look to people that can show them the way, give them confidence, and actually get out there and do things that they're asking others to do. So my grandfather was great at that. He led people. He was a man's man, very quiet, but when he spoke with authority or with the sense of, hey, you better get behind this guy, So those things, when you witness stuff like that, it gives you a lot of confidence. It's like, I want to be like that. I want to be somebody that could lead people, but not mistreat people, not handle people. My grandfather never handled people the wrong way. He never begged anybody to do anything. And he would just do what he's supposed to do, get in, take care of his business, and get back to the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, family is important to you for multiple reasons, but one of them was your uncles had to kind of convince your mom that you should be able to start playing football. So talk a little bit about that and just the beginning days of Edgerrin playing football.
Well, when you're younger, football is life. And growing up in South Florida, growing up in Immokalee, Florida, football is everything. But when I was younger, I had these nosebleeds that would happen out of nowhere. I was really good at football, and it was an easy game for me, but the toughest thing was not having a nosebleed. And it would just happen because of the South Florida sun, and out of nowhere, my nose would start bleeding. And my mom was concerned. My mom was really concerned by that. So by the time it was time to play organized football, which is Pop Warner, it was one of those things where she wasn't really all for it. But my uncles, they saw me out in the parks, they saw me in the projects, they saw me in different places playing football, and everywhere you go, my name would ring as far as this kid could play football. This kid would be pretty good. He's tough, he's physical, he's made to be a football player. So with the backing of my uncles, by me wanting to play and them wanting me to play, they gave my mom the confidence to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to let him play. And that's where it all started from there.
I love it. Now, in those early years and just getting your start, you found a passion in it and you found success in it, but you also were willing to put in the extra work. So talk about getting up early morning, 5 a.m. and doing unrequired work when maybe some of the other folks or friends weren't doing that.
Well, for myself, I was big for my size. No, I said that wrong. I was big for my age.
Yeah.
I was big for my age. And, I was always with the older guys.
Yeah.
And the older guys, when you're 14 and they're 16, or if you're 12 and they're 14, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So for myself, I figured out the way that I can keep up with people, the advantage I would have is I would outwork everybody.
Yeah.
If I put in the extra work, it would give me an advantage. So I treated that as my secret sauce, my secret weapon. Yeah. I would do extra work. I would do the things that everybody else wouldn't do, and that would give me an advantage. And once I started seeing the results, it just drove me even more, and it carried on all the way into my NFL career. You know, it's one of those things where I would work out in the middle of the night. I would try to outwork everybody. I would try to make sure that I'm in the best shape of everybody. So by the time we all get together and we're doing the same things, you know, I've already put in the work.
Yes.
And I know that the results are going to kick in a little bit later. And they started to show, and it just gave me so much confidence where I made it a permanent rule for myself.
Now, that's going to be a theme throughout your story. You know, it's not just in football that's helped you, right? It's helped you in the business world. It's helped you as a family man. And it's just doing the extra work, the unrequired, the things that other people may not be willing to do.
Yeah, I think if you look at sports, life, football is the game of life. You know, it's telling you everything. It shows you your ups, your downs. You see some of the strongest people at their weakest point.
Yep.
It shows you that people are coming after your position, showing you that you have to maintain, you have to sustain, you have to do all these things to make sure that you're able to play at a high level. And in business, the same thing. Yep. I've taken an approach to where you got to put in more time. You know, see what the greats are doing or successful people are doing, and try to mimic those, and then find ways that you can actually do a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you know, I've never been afraid to work. I've always been encouraged by work, because there's not one time that I've put in a lot of work and I didn't get the results. So me knowing that, and knowing that sometimes you don't even have to be special at what you're doing. You just got to put forth that effort and put in that work, and it's going to put you in the same space as those people who are gifted. And so,
I love it.
So I've always just took pride in just putting in extra work. You know, it's like when I come to work, which I call, you know, I got my own situations but I call it work.
Yeah.
You know, there's no clock.
Yep.
You know, we're going to do whatever it takes to get it done, because I like success.
Yeah.
I like being successful. I like to be right.
Yeah.
You know, I like to, I like to make sure that I'm doing what's right, and I'm willing to put in the time and just outwork anybody, because it feels good to win. You know,
Yes.
It's another win, and when you play in this game, you know, there's no ceiling. In football, you had a ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna have to retire. You're gonna be forced to retire.
Yep.
Because Mother Nature, you know, or Father Time is gonna do what it does. But at the same time, in business, there's no ceiling. You can go up as high as you want to go, and that's what I'm motivated by.
Yes. Now, something else that motivated you as a young man was this VHS of Pure Peyton. So, talk a little bit about watching Walter Payton and some of his moves early on.
Yeah, Walter Payton is great. You know, Walter Payton, he wasn't the biggest guy, he wasn't the fastest guy, but he was the smoothest guy. But the things that he did in the off season, you know, it always motivated me. You know, I would look at those tapes, and I would look at him running up that hill, look at him putting in that extra work in the sun, and it just gives you the confidence. And one thing that always stood out, you know, was a part in the tape where he talked about when he got hit, and he would just bounce back up. He would get back up no matter how hard somebody hit him, no matter how he's feeling at the time, he would jump right up. So I put that in my game.
Yeah.
I don't care how hard they hit me. I don't care what happened. I jump right back up.
Yep.
You know, and I always got myself up. And that's one thing I got from watching that Walter Payton tape. And I think a lot of kids, you know, you receive things at an early age, and if it hits home and you implement it, it's going to be part of your lifestyle, and you're going to reap the benefits of it. And that's one of the things I reap the benefits of that, just from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah.
A guy could think he's hitting me super hard, or he really like laid it to me, but I jump right back up.
Yep.
And it all stems from watching a VCR or VHS tape at a young age.
Yes. Now, as you're progressing through high school, you start getting some notoriety and you start getting some acknowledgement. And one of the biggest ones is the Parade All-American as a senior. So talk a little bit about just being able to stand out amongst, you know, people not only in Florida, right, which is one of the hotbeds of recruiting, but across the country.
Well, you know, back during my time, it was, you know, I'm growing up in Immokalee. Nobody really knows about Immokalee. So you don't get that much notoriety. But as you start playing, and the people start seeing like, hey, something is special about this kid. And out of nowhere, you know, you become a Parade All-American. And back then it was a big deal. It was a big deal to be a Parade All-American. And for me, you know, that was one of those things that give you hope. Like, hey, I can come right here from Immokalee and become a parade All-American. And it's the same thing as all these other guys around the nation. Then you start looking at these different names of these guys, and you start saying, I'm in the group of the guys that everybody's kind of recognizing or playing at a high level.
Yep.
And so it gives you even more confidence. Like, I want to do more. I want to do more. I want to be better. And that has always been the drive.
So talk a little bit about that, because, you know, we're talking about in the scope of football, but I think that's true in a lot of things in life. If you want to get better at something, you need to surround yourself with people that are doing it at a high level, right? If you want to be a good dad, surround yourself with someone that you really respect or would like to emulate as a father. If you want to be good at business, surround yourself with people that are excelling or doing well at business. So talk a little bit about that. Just, you know, we're talking about it as football right now, but for someone listening, you know, maybe they're not an All-American, you know, all NFL, all Hall of Fame football player, but they might be able to apply that in other ways.
You know, in life, you know, there's a map, there's a blueprint, and the blueprint is right in front of you.
Yeah.
And sometimes the blueprint is in a book, it's in a person, it's in a person's mistake, it's in a person's success. Now you have to put yourself in a space to where you're able to receive these things. And once you start paying attention to what those people did, and you start looking at the people that aren't successful and what they did, and you start, you know, making a comparison, and it starts showing you that, hey, if I want to be here, these are the things I need to do.
Yeah.
And if I want to maintain, these are the things I need to do. If I want to know the wrong way to do something, these are the people who I need to look at. And so you just start, you know, putting all those things together, start looking at these people, and then you find a couple people that you say, man, you know, these are the people.
Yes.
These are the ones that I'm going to look at. And I think everybody should find 5 people that they should really pay attention to. And those 5 people, they're going to have a lot of similarities, but they're going to be different.
Yep.
And their difference is what's going to always give you clues. And that's a method that I've always used, and it's helped me out. You know, I've always got people say, look, I'm going to look at this person, this person, this person. And then I know they're different. They're not in the same field, but they both have reached success, and they're at the level of where I want to be at. And by just paying attention to those type of things and actually implementing things that they're doing, you'll see yourself getting better. You know, it's like, are you going to wake up and read? Okay, it's cool. Some people say, yeah, I read. I wake up and I read every day, but what are you reading? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it goes a little bit deeper and deeper. You can't just say, hey, I read a comic book, or I read just something that had nothing to do with where I'm trying to go. So once you start getting detailed in your plan, there's a map that you follow, and it's going to put you in a space to be successful.
I love it. Now, as you're graduating from high school, you decide that, hey, the Miami Hurricanes are the place to be, and that, you know, they've had some good seasons, and you're coming into a program that's well established, but they're also coming into a new coach and a new era of Miami football. So talk a little bit about showing up to campus and you know, your excitement to play at the highest level.
Well, the University of Miami was always our pro team. If you grew up in South Florida, that's your NFL team first. So I've always been a big-time Miami Hurricane fan, and that's the only place I ever wanted to play. And to get an opportunity to go there, you know, it's like a privilege and an honor to actually be putting on that orange and green and wearing that U on your head, on your helmet, because it means a lot, because those are the things that drive you, and those were the things that you've always envisioned as a kid. So for yourself, it's like, man, this is really happening. And for me, you know, I was just excited to be able to go over there and compare myself to those other guys, because, you know, when you're playing in your area, all you know is the people in your area.
Right.
And then once you get to college, you get a chance to see people that he was the top linebacker, he was the top this, or he was the top safety, or the top receiver. And now you get a true comparison.
Yeah.
You know, you get a true comparison to, hey, where am I? Where do I measure up at? Yep. And that's what gave me even more confidence. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Let me tell them.
So you're at Miami. It's an honor to be there. You're super excited, and the first couple of years, first year goes all right, right? You're getting some playing time, but really the second year is where you start really making the name for yourself and stepping up to the table.
Well, at the University of Miami, the first year I was a red shirt,
Yeah.
a red shirted freshman. I wasn't even expected to play.
Yeah.
But then due to injuries, I had got thrust into the to playing, and everybody knew what I could do because in practice, everybody gets a chance to see who's who. But when you have older guys, it's like a chain of command,
Yep.
and the coach, they kind of stuck to the script. But my second year is when things really started to take off, and that's when guys got a chance to really see me. Or I guess not just the guys there, but everybody got a chance to take notice and say, hey, this kid is legit. This kid is pretty good. And everything just went from there. I just continued to build on it, put in a lot of work, tried to, watch all the guys that were going to the pros,
Yep.
pay attention to everything they're doing, and then measure myself. And I would just gauge everything. And once you start seeing yourself and they say, okay, can you run this speed? Can you jump this high? Can you do this for lifting? You say, hey, I can do all those things. And naturally, I'm gifted from an athletic standpoint. Now it's a matter of, are you going to do what it takes to maintain? Are you going to do what it takes to stay out of trouble?
Yep.
Are you going to take care of your school? Are you going to take care of your body? Those are the things, because when you're in the city of Miami, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of temptations. So that's the biggest hurdle that you have to kind of go over, because once you start having success, I was 18 and my picture was all on every pole down the expressway. So those things could really become a distraction. But if you stay the course and you stay locked in, those things won't affect you. You just continue to just put in the work. And that's what I did. I put in the work, and things just happened the way they were supposed to happen. Going to the NFL, getting drafted, 4th pick by the Indianapolis Colts, right out of the University of Miami. A school that, that a lot of people probably wouldn't have even taken the chance to go to because of the sanctions and all the things that was looming. But we had a great coach, great staff, and we had a great group of guys that pushed each other, that was hungry, that wanted more for themselves and for their family. So for myself, the goal has always been make it to the NFL, ready to take my family to another level, take care of my mom, and also had a child while I was in school. So those were things that motivated me. Mm-hmm. And that motivation it just drives you. And the motivation is usually the map.
Yep.
Or you have the map, but it kind of helps you get through the map or see the map through.
I love it. Now, as you're coming into the NFL, because you do have a great year, really put on, I would say you were on the map, but really put yourself on the map in the UCLA game, right? Playing number 1, rush for almost 300 yards. I mean, that was a big time game for you. But as you go into the NFL, you mentioned it, number 4 pick, but there's probably a little bit more pressure than normal for you coming in as the 4th pick, because that year or that offseason, Marshall Faulk had left the Colts, right? So you're filling a prime player's role, and you were drafted ahead of somebody else that was a pretty prime running back in college that year. So talk a little bit about, if you had a chip on your shoulder just from hearing maybe things people were saying, or, how you felt coming into the year.
No, it's football. For a person like myself, once you realize that you're really good and you know that you can do this, you don't really worry about anything outside of playing the game. I've always played the game, and when you get a chance, you check out my book. I detailed everything from gold teeth to gold jacket.
Yes.
My book is on my website, Edgerrin James, www.edgerrinjames.com. But you can get a little bit more insight that this interview wouldn't be able to tell you about the whole journey from going through that whole process. Even with I speak on the situation with the draft. I speak on the fact that I'm dealing with a trade. So I made sure I covered all those things so that person can have a little more detailed insight into what it's like in my mindset, because I was never worried. I was never worried, because for me the goal has always been to get to the NFL.
Yes.
When I get to the NFL, I'm doing what I set out to do.
Yeah.
So nothing to me was a problem.
Now, the thing that would be interesting to me would be to know for you, a lot of people, when they reach that goal, they don't feel the desire to continue to get better. They don't feel the desire to continue to press on because they're like, well, I hit my goal. But you hit your goal, and you even had a great first year, but you continued to get better and you continued to have phenomenal seasons. So talk a little bit about, continuing to have drive even after you hit maybe that first big goal.
Well, see, you don't have just one goal.
Yeah.
You have goals.
Yes.
That's why you have the S on that, because it's like I wanted to make it to the NFL, but from the beginning, I made it clear. I want to leave my mark. I want to be one of the best to ever play the game. And so that goal is what continued to drive me, knowing that, hey, I want to be one of the guys that when you speak of this game, 20, 30, 40, my name will come up at some point, or my name will be in the conversation. And as a football player, it's always about getting to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So, and I was able to accomplish that. But the reason I was able to accomplish that because you continue to work, continue to put in whatever it took to get there. And I did my part, and I was able to achieve that goal, make it to the Hall of Fame, and that that was like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
That was the closure to my football career, because I started, playing Pop Warner football.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it ends at Pop Warner. Then some guys make it to high school, some guys make it to college, some guys make it to the NFL. But to sit amongst the best, that was always a goal, and the drive came from, wanting to be one of the best and leave my mark.
Now, earlier you talked about surrounding yourself with 5 great people, and we were talking about that in any aspect of life. But when you were with the Indianapolis Colts, you were surrounded by a lot of really talented players that we still talk about today, right? Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison. So talk a little bit about, that, and just having other guys that were bought into the ultimate goal.
Well, I think it's a combination of you being somebody that you have your work ethic, you knew the assignment, you knew what you had to do, and now you match up or you sit up there in the same room with somebody that has the same drive as you, and you have a lot of common interests. And I think that's what separated us from a lot of people. We had a common interest. Our interest was everybody wanted to be great. Everybody wanted to be good. No matter who was around, everybody put in their work. And so we had a quarterback that would work. We had receivers that would work. We had a tight end that would work. Everybody that you see that's successful, they put in the work. We didn't have nobody that was a prima donna or somebody who would come in and think that they could just play or show up and play. We had everybody that would put in the work and do what it takes to be successful. And that's what made our team special.
That's really good. Now, something that I would wonder for you is, as you're having success, how do you keep that balance of not getting arrogant, but maintaining your confidence, right? I think for a lot of people, as they're reaching certain levels of success, they feel like, oh, well, I don't need to listen to other people. But you were consistently getting feedback and, being willing to grow and develop as a player as your career progressed.
Well, it starts at a young age, because if you look at a lot of kids now, they get a little success and they veer off.
Yeah.
And so, you are what you are when you're having success, and you are what you are when you're not having success. So I've always remained right in the middle, staying myself, just doing whatever it takes to keep going, because it's a game. It's always been a game. I played the game at a high level. So nobody could really get me off of my square because of the fact that I'm doing what I've always been doing. So this is no surprise to me. I've always been successful at this game. The man up top has blessed me with the ability to play at a high level and be great at it.
Yeah.
And so I received it and I took it and did everything that I could with it.
Yes. Now, as you're progressing through your time with the Colts, you guys have great playoff runs, but never quite make, the Super Bowl run. And then as your time with them is transitioning, that first year after you leave, the Colts do go to the Super Bowl. And I think something that speaks to your character and who you are is Mr. Irsay, after the win, still wanted to make sure you got a ring because you had laid a lot of the ground and foundational work that it took for them to get there. So talk a little bit about, the emotions of riding through that, but also what it meant to have, them acknowledge you even after the fact.
Yeah, like I've always spoke on this, and I never have a problem with that. And then that's what I'm saying. Everything, every little detail is usually in the book.
Yeah.
But with that, it's football. Anybody that plays football know how football goes and know that the business side of it. And so I did everything I was supposed to do. And the Colts, great organization, and we had a great relationship. We built something, and because of salary cap and all the business side of things, no team is going to stay the same. You haven't seen one team that remained the same,
right?
Ever. It's always somebody that's going to be different in their locker room. And for myself, it was because I deserved more financially, and the salary cap wasn't where it needed to be. It's one of those things where you have to take a business approach, and the relationship remained intact, and forever we're still tied together. And I'm a Colt for life. So that really was a non-issue, but it's cool to be a part of something like that. That's great, and understand that this relationship is bigger than football.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it.
Yep. Well, and although the Colts did that, you made a nice transition to the Cardinals, and the Cardinals had some great success as well. And you guys end up making it to the Super Bowl the very next year with, Kurt Warner, Anquan Boldin, Larry Fitzgerald. So talk a little bit about, coming into a different dynamic, but yet bringing a presence and, I guess your expertise into the team and helping lead that way.
Well, I know Arizona had good players.
Yeah.
If you get in the room with good players and you're doing the right thing, you're going to have success in this league. And it's just a matter of time. They just need a little structure around there. So we came together, we brought something that the city never seen and the organization never seen, and we was able to make a Super Bowl run. And it was a great thing because for me, it's one of those things where you sit back as a business person or as a person that feels like he knows what he's talking about. That feels like he knows what he's talking about, and you say, "I'm going to go to Arizona," and a lot of people look at you and say, "Hey, why would you go to Arizona?"
Yeah, right.
And for myself, it's like it's a no-brainer. It has all the pieces, and the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah,
we make it to the Super Bowl right there in Arizona.
Right,
something that nobody, a lot of people would have probably ducked or wouldn't have seen. So that right there was a good feeling to know that you go somewhere and you see something that everybody else don't see.
Yeah.
And that's similar to the moves I make in business.
Yeah.
I'll do certain things that people don't really understand or understand why, but if you really dissect and you dive in, you can see why this business is having success or why this person was able to see this and everybody else didn't see it. So I just stuck to my principles and ended up making a good decision and went to Arizona.
Absolutely. So as your time in the NFL comes to an end, I always think it's difficult, or as I've talked to many NFL players, it's difficult to make that transition out because I've spent my whole life from Bob Warner until now, really dedicated to this sport. But along the way, you had been starting, ideas of businesses, and you very quickly got into running your own businesses and some clubs and things like that. So talk a little bit about, getting the entrepreneurial bug and starting to make wise business choices and investments there.
From the beginning, I was always a business person, and that's what I go back to my grandfather, a leader of men, a person that's an entrepreneur, don't have to work for somebody else. So that was an easy transition for me. I have been setting up my stuff because I always knew that I want to be a successful business person. Yeah. And to be a successful business person, you have to do certain things. And those are things that I started doing at an early age, and I love to read, I love to study, I love to make sure that I'm in the know. And so when the transition started, a lot of people or a lot of players, it's not as easy for them, but for myself, it was a seamless transition. Yes. Because mentally I was already doing that from the first time I stepped foot on the football field.
Now, what inspired you to get into the club role? I know you mentioned, hey, there's going to be guys that want to get together and congregate. So hey, if they're if they're going to do that, I might as well be able to provide a great spot and then also run a great business. But talk a little bit about how you've started in the different endeavors you're in now.
Well, with the club, it started with the real estate. I started out with real estate, and once you understand real estate, you say, okay, this is one of the best investments, especially if you make good decisions over time. They'll appreciate and they'll get better and better, and they become more valuable. And for myself, I like to have fun, so I try to mix business and pleasure at the same time. So I own the real estate, and then also we always find ourselves going to nightclubs, congregating with each other in these social spaces. And for myself down in Miami, I'm always out. So it only made sense. It only made sense for me to get involved because that's where we're going to be at anyway. And plus, I love business, so it's like a 2-for-1 for me. And now you have somewhat of a safe haven for the guys to come, and it's different when you don't know the owner, and then you know that the owner's one of us. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that. And then also you're inspiring the others and showing them that, hey, these things are possible. You can do these things. You just have to do what it takes. And that's one thing I'm doing right now is always trying to be an example to show these guys like these things are possible.
Well, so with that note, you're doing that not only with, friends and young football players that you get a mentor, but with your kids. And, each and every one of your kids is in a different phase of life, but has also had different awesome successes. So talk a little bit about what it means to be a dad, but also what it means to, raise, young people up and give them a great platform to launch into their careers with.
Well, with your children, you get a chance to live your life through them, relive your life through them. And that's what I do. But I get behind anything they want to do. I make sure that I give them all the tools, all the resources, everything that it takes for them to be successful. And I'm into any endeavor that they're into, as long as they see it through. And once you're in a household where that is the norm, that is the way it go, then you don't even have no other option because this is all you know. It's one of those things where the kids, they see you doing all this stuff and they want to emulate you, or they want to say, hey man, I want to have my own. And that's what I do. I want to motivate them internally. In our house, I'm motivating them so that when they step outside of the house, they already got I wouldn't say a head start. They have they have more insight than normal.
I love it. Now, additionally, you spoke about it, going to Miami was this great opportunity that you were excited about, but it also ended up being something that you wanted to stay connected with and are passionate about. And so you've been very, philanthropic and generous to give back there. And I think for a lot of people, you look back and you say, man, if only we would have had something like this when I was going to college, like that'd have been great. But it wasn't the case. And so you wanted to make sure that, the new wave of players had that opportunity. So talk a little bit about, being philanthropic with, the treasures that God's, been able to bless you with earning and giving back to others.
Well, that's part of I think it's a natural obligation. And when it's in you, and you understand the things that you've been afforded, and now you just reach back. So it's a natural reaction for myself to go back and try to help as much as possible. And those kids, when you look at those kids, sometimes it's like you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing yourself, and anything you can do to help those kids is always great. And if you get everybody just doing a little bit, it takes the strain off of one person or two people. And they say it takes a village, and it's true. So you get in there, you do your part, and you never know who is going to inspire, who is going to trigger. But as long as you've done what you're supposed to do, or you felt like you should do, I think it's a win-win.
Talking through getting into the Hall of Fame, I know you said, hey, it was a great honor to get in there, but talk a little bit about, the emotion of finding out that you're going to be entering in, and then, just having all of your, teammates and friends there on the big day when you get inducted into the Hall of Fame.
At the Hall of Fame, that was a great experience. It's something that you would never forget. And the process is a little challenging, or it's a little difficult to kind of monitor. So you really don't know. You really don't know what it takes, who's going to get in. And so as the years go on, you kind of get I ain't going to say disappointed, it kind of gets to where it's like, if it happens, it happens. It doesn't, it don't.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a first or a second ballot. I was, I had to wait like 5-6 years. So you get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm not even tripping on it because I really don't. There's no science to this.
Yes.
And once you see that there's no science, you say, whenever it happens, it happens. At least I'm a finalist. At least I know at some point I'll get in.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, you get that phone call, and once you get that phone call, everything speeds up. Everything starts to change. It's like now you're part of the elite.
Yes.
And when you start breaking it down numerically, there's 360 something Hall of Famers. There's 100 and something living Hall of Famers. So you're starting to say, man, out of all these thousands of people that have ever played the game, you're one of those 300 that's been inducted, and you're one of those 100 and something that's actually living. It kind of puts things in perspective, and it started saying, man, dang, this is really big. So all those years that you didn't get in, once you get in, you start saying, hey, it didn't even matter because now I'm here, now I'm home, and Canton, Ohio will be your home forever while you're gone. Your grandkids, your great grandkids, they'll be able to go back and they would say, my grandfather or my uncle or my family is in here, and it's only 300 families can say that, and that's a big deal. And then, so when you start putting things in perspective and you start to look at it and say, you know what, man, I'm glad I did it the way I did it. I'm glad I went through the things I went through, because if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yes.
And now that I'm here, I'm going to enjoy it, and you have to live it because it's immortal. I mean, it's forever. And so I celebrate it every day, all the time, and I carry myself like a Hall of Famer because you're supposed to, because it's something that is special. It means a lot, not only to myself, but to the NFL, to the Hall, and to the whole brotherhood. And it's something that we can talk about it, we can discuss it, but you never will really get to understand it until you get in that room, and everybody can't get in that room.
Right.
So it's a special honor, and it makes everything that you've done feel well worth it when it came to playing the sport.
Yes.
So.
Well, Edgerrin, it's amazing to see all the hard work and dedication and, focus on a goal and what that's allowed you to already get to. But at the same token, it's cool to see the next level and the next phase of life and all the different trails that you're blazing, and excited to continue to watch your journey and all the amazing things you're doing. Any other pivotal moments that you want to make sure to highlight in your journey that stand out to you on, who knew in the moment on your way here?
Nah, everything is ongoing, so stay tuned. I'm going to stay relevant. I'll stay doing things, and the story's only going to get better and better because you have the next wave of Edgerrin James kids and ventures and just living life, so I'll be around. I'll continue to do things of interest and continue to break down barriers and try to help as many people as possible just from being myself.
Yes. Well, all you got to promise me is that, hey, 2-3 years from now, as you continue to write this story, we can hop back on here and highlight all the new moments that have led to where you're at that point.
That's easy. As long as you come through, purchase some books, and we're good to go.
We'll make sure to put the website on there. But yes, go get his book, and we'll be doing a couple giveaways on the books as well. So, Edgerrin, thanks so much, my man.
All right. Thanks for having me. All right.